Hello Penguinauts, I'm the Beardy Penguin and welcome back to Kerbal Rising. In the last episode we began a campaign in the Olu'um system, the planets around a newly formed brown dwarf star on the very edge of the Kerbal solar system. And we managed to take the two outermost planets, Volux and Fume. However, the true test is still to come. We have a massive fleet congregating around Telos, the capital of the Telos Protectorate, the forces of which we are going up against, and of course numerous ground forces on the surface of the planet as well. So it's this fleet that we're going to aim to destroy today, and then using our single remaining carrier that we didn't use the last part of the turn, the ISS Spirit of Drados, we're going to try and weaken some of the ground forces. So here we can see the Crimson Fleet just departing from Fume, getting a rather beautiful shot there of the aurora all over the surface of the dark side of Fume. And as you can see here, we are now approaching Telos itself, the beating heart of the Olu'um system, a beautiful Kerbin-like world which is ripe for the taking. And the enemy fleet has now formed up around Telos Slate, the small mining installation that is in a rather peculiar and eccentric orbit around Telos. So much the same as last time, we're opening the battle with a torpedo salvo consisting of 4 .625 meter torpedoes, because they worked pretty damn well last time. So, you know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We do almost hit one of our own skiffs there, but thankfully just narrowly miss it. I guess just buzzing the crew on board. Maybe the crew of this Aerospace class Corvette have got some kind of rivalry with the crew of that Phoebe class skiff. We didn't actually use the Aerospace class in the last battle because we had 4 torpedoes on board the ISS Fortitude, our Venus class destroyer, but we've used all those now. So, I mean, the only purpose of the Aerospace class is to carry 4 torpedoes. I would kind of scrap it, considering it's useless, but, well, it's not useless. It has some uses, and, you know, that's shown right here as we blast the enemy destroyer and the enemy light frigate. Now, both of them take some very, very serious damage there, but neither of them are actually destroyed. We sent 3 torpedoes after the destroyer and a single after the light frigate because it only took a single torpedo to deal with it last time. But although we've ripped the front off of the light frigate, it is still very much operational. And the destroyer has taken quite a bit more damage. I think 2 torpedoes hit it. But both of its 155mm railguns are still intact. What we did manage to do, though, is knock out a chunk of its power generation. So even though it's firing both of them at us now, later on in the battle it starts struggling to produce enough electric charge to actually power its railguns. So it only fires once about every minute or so. But we can see here the railgun rounds are now starting to fly in amongst our fleet, and we're beginning to close the distance. The light frigate here still has its 55mm railgun, unfortunately. Last time a single torpedo was able to obliterate the entire ship, but this time, well, we're going to have to do things the old-fashioned way and close into close quarters weapon range. You can see here the destroyer now having a little bit of trouble actually firing those railguns. They require a lot of electric charge to use, and I think we took out its main reactor, but it is still able to fire one of them. We're now entering 10 kilometers, so the skiffs are opening up with those anti-ship lasers, cutting into the enemy skiffs, and once again they only have a single anti-ship laser, so they are returning fire, but our skiffs has got twice the firepower that they do, so we should be able to deal with them relatively easily. But at this kind of range, anti-ship lasers, they really don't do much whatsoever. But it's nice to be pestering the enemy fleet, you know, let them know that we're there, keep them on their toes. Occasional railgun rounds are flying into the enemy vessels, but even at this kind of range, railguns, they're not particularly accurate. They are the most accurate weapons we have available to us, and certainly the most powerful. But yeah, space is big, so the enemy fleet can just perform light maneuvers to try and avoid them. Our anti-ship lasers are starting to have a bit of success though, and as you see we're carving up one of the enemy vessels now. I think one of the railgun rounds might have cut through it as well. And you see we're starting to do a fair bit of damage to the enemy vessels, but still nothing utterly catastrophic, and we're just carving our way through the enemy hull slowly but surely. That's the thing about lasers. Don't do a huge amount of damage at long range, but they consistently hit. There's no real way to avoid them because they, you know, travel at the speed of light. Now we're getting within 8 kilometers and we're opening up, and all hell, it begins to break loose. We're firing with all 4 of our 30mm cannons on the ISS Fortitude, and of course the Havoc is opening up with its 75mm main guns. However, the enemy fleet is targeting, rightfully so, our main destroyer, the ISS Fortitude, and our light frigates, which only have 150mm of armor. Now those light frigates are quite important. They have 55mm railguns. That's the bulk of our long-range firepower, and that's the only thing that's going to get through the more heavily armored vessels. So what we're doing is we're moving forward our Phoebe-class skiffs and the ISS Havoc, because they have more armor and they're a bit more expendable than those light frigates. So we can try and draw some of the fire away from them. You see the enemy fleet is being torn to shreds now, especially with the ISS Havoc now being in range, and we're pummeling this light frigate here with 75mm explosive rounds, and those anti-ship lasers are now becoming a little bit more effective. But it's an inverse square law to do with how much energy those lasers supply. So if you get twice, you know, if you close half the distance, it doesn't mean that the laser's twice as powerful. Unfortunately, though, the one of our light frigates, the ISS Vanguard, gets sliced in half, and it's now completely inoperable. And with a final explosion, its fate is sealed. So I'm a little bit pissed off at this point. Obviously, they know to target our light frigates first, which, you know, is decent battle planning, taking out the weaker targets to try and whittle down my fleet. But yeah, it was kind of irritating. I think it was a combination of anti-ship lasers, and I think our 155mm railgun round was what sealed its fate and actually finally sliced it in two. So what we're doing is we're closing the ISS Havoc even faster now, and as you see, we've obliterated the enemy destroyer, and there we cut one of the enemy skiffs in half. Now all that's left is one other skiff, and, well, that light frigate's not there anymore. Light frigate explodes with quite a bit of passion. And now all we have left is those 2 corvettes with their 30mm cannons, and our Phoebe-class skiffs are now closing to pretty much suicidal ranges. But although the enemy corvette's main guns are going to do the same amount of damage whatever range we're at, the skiffs, of course, have their anti-ship lasers, and although they overheat very quickly, hence why they're not very good for point defense, when you're this close to an enemy vessel and you're using anti-ship lasers on them, they just vanish. You just carve through the enemy hull within seconds, and look at that, gone. And with that, the enemy fleet is vanquished. So we took some pretty heavy damage, but only one ship was actually lost. And now we can send a single Callisto tactical bomber from the ISS Spirit of Drados down to the surface. Now, there's some pretty powerful surface forces on Telos. We've got a garrison with a number of tanks and anti-aircraft vehicles surrounding a sort of listening station. And we also have a naval base. Now, what I'm thinking is, this turn, we're going to have this carrier available to us. So what we're going to do is we're going to send the Callisto down to whittle down the tanks in that first base. Maybe just blow a few of them up with some of our air-to-ground missiles. And then next episode, we're going to land some tanks, finish them off, and also I'm thinking about landing some kind of patrol boat, some kind of torpedo boat maybe, or a little gunboat on the surface to actually take out those naval vessels, because we bombed enough naval vessels. I think we should have an actual naval battle. Now these are big frigates we're going up against, but I think if we have a maneuverable enough torpedo boat, we should be able to take them on. So, you know, let me know what you think of that idea in the comments below. I think that could be quite fun. Anyway, as you see, just entering the atmosphere of Telos. It actually has a relatively thin atmosphere, all things considered, but we get a beautiful shot of Olu'um over it there as we approach the enemy installation, getting up our targeting laser. Now, we've actually altered the design of the Callisto a fair bit. We got rid of all those useless 50 cal turrets because they're intended to shoot down missiles, but we can literally just outrun missiles. So instead, we've got ourselves an extra 2 missiles, so we have 2 extra ones, so we have a total of 8 Maverick missiles now, and we also have a 30mm fixed cannon. So if there's anything, any tanks on the ground which are incapable of performing anti-aircraft duties, then we might just perform a few strafing runs. So first things first, there is an anti-aircraft tank down there with a 30mm cannon. Now that thing has an 8km range and it's deadly accurate. It's the same cannon that we use on our spacecraft, so we're going to try and deal with that first, just loosing a single Maverick missile down towards it to blow it off the face of the planet. We just see the missile heading in, very narrowly missing that giant tracking dish down there, but flying straight and true and seemingly obliterating the enemy vehicle. So now what we have left are a few tanks to deal with, because yeah, they're going to be a bit of a pain to deal with our tanks, because they've got a lot of armor and some pretty scary guns, and our Ison class tanks are only medium tanks, although their guns are quite powerful. Their armor, well, there's a limit to how much of a beating that it can actually take. So we swing the aircraft around and we're going to go in for a second run. We're lining up on one of the main heavy tanks in this installation. Try and take out the big guns first. We don't have enough missiles to deal with all of them, because some of these tanks are going to take a couple of missiles to take out, but if we can do a decent amount of damage, maybe take out about half of them, that should make our job next turn a damn sight easier. So here we go, we're just coasting in. We're not really taking things too cautiously, because that was the vehicle that we blew up was the only vehicle that actually was capable of blowing us out of the sky. Surprisingly, no surface to air missiles. I was very surprised not to have any SAMs shooting back at us, but our missiles once again fly straight and true and we destroy the enemy tank. Unfortunately though, that anti-aircraft tank was not as dead as we thought, and some 30mm rounds slice through our fuselage and blow our aircraft out of the sky. As you see, our missile narrowly missed it, and although we did manage to do a lot of damage to it, it is still intact. Very, very irritating, but oh well. We should be able to deal with them next turn. Now, at the end of the turn, we have a little bit of housekeeping. The ISS Anubis is being redeployed. Where to? Well, I can't say. That's actually classified. Our stealth ships aren't actually operated by the Navy. They're operated by our intelligence division. And also, we are launching a brand new class of ship. This is the Rhea class corvette. You see, we have a lot of space which we're occupying now, which is pretty much completely undefended. So we need a new class of vessel which doesn't actually need to have interplanetary transport capability, but has a lot of firepower and can perform numerous different roles to actually hold on to our occupied territory and actually work in tandem with our defense platforms. So our defense platforms have those big 155mm railguns to deal with the heavily armored targets, and then these are hopefully going to operate in pairs because they only cost 16 points, so we can launch 2 a turn. And with their 30mm cannons and their 4 torpedoes, they should hopefully be able to protect those platforms so that they can take out the enemy fleet before they manage to put down any effective fire. They'll have a trial by fire in the coming turns, I'm sure. We'll launch a carrier at some point to send some out to Scorch, and probably launch at a shipyard around Gaia so we can get some up around Minmus. But that is the end of the episode. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I do hope you've enjoyed. In the next episode, we shall finish our subjugation of Olu'um, maybe head out to Elu or Theli, but then our conquering of the solar system will be pretty much complete. Not taking into account, of course, the United Federation of Nebos, which will need a much more consolidated offensive to deal with. But that will be a threat that we'll deal with in future episodes. Thank you for watching, everyone. I've been the Beardy Penguin, and I'll see you all next time.